What's going on, guys? Aarava here, and welcome back to the Pitlane podcast, episode number 44 today for the Bahrain Grand Prix race review. And how ironic that it's Vettel's 44th race win in Formula 1. Vettel wins the Bahrain Grand Prix from Lewis Hamilton to Valtteri Bottas.
Oh.
And what a very exciting race we had. Lots of awesome moments, a lot of very tentative moments, really, especially in the first stint, the top five within, I think it was 2.3 seconds of each other, within DRS of each other. It was a very nice scene to see, and throughout the race, it was very tense to really see what was going on. But eventually, things unfolded, and it was very clear to everyone that Mercedes actually just have quite a poor race car. They just didn't call it right today, and Ferrari come out of nowhere from where they were in qualifying with a very, very good race win there for Vettel. And Vettel was, I think to say, more happy than usual to win a Grand Prix. He seemed extra happy by that, probably by the 4/10 gap in qualifying yesterday. So Callum, what do you make of it?
Well, I'd let Tom speak because he's got something on his chest that he wants to let out.
Right, I was going to say, I'd go one further. Vettel got his 44th win today, beating car number 44 as well. So,
yeah.
And this is the 44th podcast, so...
Yeah, I mean, DC brought it up on the podium interview, saying that usually that's a lucky number for Hamilton, but today it was Vettel's. So, yeah, what do you guys make of it? The start was very, very exciting.
Well, the number one drivers... once again stepped forward, didn't they? The start very clean and composed. An oddly weird start for Hamilton. Bottas was fairly decent. Everything was fairly good to say. Didn't bottle under pressure off the start. Fairly decent into turn one. Vettel did very good to go around the outside of Hamilton. Hamilton just was, I think he was kind of more looking in his mirrors, just trying to not lose any more positions because I think he'd already given up on Vettel. And then looking a bit further down, got to say huge shout out to Verstappen, who had an incredible start as well. But overall, really clean, which has been quite a good little... a new trend in 2017. There hasn't been any incidents at turn one yet, so fingers crossed that carries on going.
Yeah, it's been good. And then obviously Verstappen, actually his initial getaway was quite poor, but he just nailed the line through turn 1 and 2. But then eventually came premature end for him. Brake failure, went straight on at the end of sector 1. Shame for him because he was looking better than Ricciardo was looking in that first phase of the Grand Prix. And Ricciardo did manage to sort of hang on to the top for a little while longer, but then eventually dropped off a little bit. He was fighting basically Raikkonen and Massa all race long in a kind of strategic battle, if you will. Top 3 got away, but straight away then, obviously Bottas complained about rear tyre pressures, overheating issues. You could see Vettel, just like Australia, and he mentioned that in the kind of post-race room, that he was able to just kind of keep along, like kind of motion with his hands to that top race engineer at Ferrari. He was able to keep in very, very close, like he did in Australia, to that Merc. And that seems like a good characteristic of Ferrari. I think they mentioned that in a commentary. Seems like a very drivable car compared to the Merc, where it's on edge. And so, because of that, in the race, it's seeming like it's worse than quali.
Yeah, that's something we brought up last year, but people kind of slammed us for it. But it is seeming to be something that we're seeing this year. But we can't really say much because if we look at the start, I think all fans, any fan looking at that top 5, or even top 6, I think when Massa was involved as well. I can't remember, top 6, 7. No, but the fact that the top 10 was so close, and this could be partially due to the fact that Bottas was apparently reasonably going quite slow with apparently high tyre pressures actually. So obviously the contact patch was too low. So and then the thermal degradation.
It was really close in qualifying also yesterday. So it wasn't just a race specific thing. It was quite a close qualifying, to be fair. This
is the thing. What I was going to get on though is the fact that it's very strange. It's becoming a trend as well to see that Mercedes are the qualifying team of the year so far. But there's a big but, and then no points in qualifying. Ferrari do seem to have the upper hand in the race, but it's like they do have the upper hand, but I don't know. I don't know whether they do. I think Mercedes and Ferrari are so similar on race pace. It was because what I was going to talk about was the fact that when we saw that train at the front, when it was Bottas, Vettel, Hamilton was starting to drop back a little bit into the Red Bulls, and this was the point when the Red Bulls thought maybe we should pit as well. And was that Hamilton dropping back because he was struggling in the dirty air, or was he purposely dropping back to save his tyres? It's going to be a lot of cat and mouse between Ferrari and Mercedes, because when Mercedes were 1 and 2. When Mercedes are leading and they're kind of stuck in this wedge of strategy, it does kind of put the strategies to the test, and fair play to Ferrari for taking the gamble.
Yeah, well, I think it just the fact that it's always because Raikkonen is nowhere to be seen. He's literally a ghost in these races. I think it helps that it's a 2-on-1 situation, so Ferrari can make it awkward for Mercedes because obviously they've got to try and keep 2 cars and 2 drivers happy. Whereas with Vettel, it's like, yeah, let's just make it awkward for everybody. And I was literally, even though I was watching 2 things at a time with the football and the F1, I could literally see it, and I think anyone could see it. I was literally screaming at my screen like, Vettel, just come in now and make it awkward for him. Pit now, please, please. And eventually, obviously, he came in, and that's where it all sort of it went wrong. And immediately, I thought they threw it away, and like almost just like China. Bad luck with a safety car. I thought they lost the chance there, but somehow he still came out ahead of Bottas. So, done well.
Yeah, like you said, the pace is so close that it really is also going to come down to, if not more than often, like the actual strategy of the teams. And this year, Ferrari chosen a perfect year where that's come into play to actually not be bottlers in the strategy. And so far, they've really played pretty much everything to a T. They got unlucky at China. They may have got unlucky here, but minus the unlucky parts in terms of what they can control. It's all seeming really, really good for them. So they keep. I think, with the media blackout they've been doing so far still in this season, I think generally, like we were mentioning in the podcast before the pre-season, and what people were mentioning, the pundits were mentioning last season, they've done exactly that. They've stopped kind of shouting about everything off circuit, and they just kind of focus on themselves, and it's working wonders for them at the moment. So
what stood out for me was gone.
I was going to say, especially if certain drivers get penalties, which is probably going to be the hottest topic of this. Even though it shouldn't really be a hot topic, because I'm probably going to get a load of Hamilton fans on my back, even though most of Twitter is agreeing with me here, and probably you two as well, Hamilton deserved the penalty.
Oh yeah, 100%.
He deserved the 5 second
really,
that much.
I don't really know, because I was watching it from my dad's phone in distance, and I couldn't read who was under investigation, but I sort of scrolled Twitter, and I looked at it, and I sort of watched it back. He basically to avoid stacking, double stacking, slowed down.
Through the final corner, Hamilton knows that he's going to have to double stack with Bottas. So to kind of lessen that blow and hopefully maybe just get the double stack perfectly timed, he tries to slow himself down, and in doing so has to try and back Ricciardo down. Ricciardo can't obviously overtake because it's under safety car, but he's not allowed to back up. You're only allowed to... The car in front is only allowed to back up if you're, first of all, even in first place, which he wasn't, and the safety car's coming in on that next lap, so you become the pace leader. But the safety car wasn't even collecting that train yet, so it was completely out of order for him to do that.
So they were almost at race pace at that point, basically. They should have been going almost at
safety car pace. Safety car pace.
Virtual safety car pace, basically, coming into the pits.
But the big thing here is Ricciardo had to get out the throttle at least 6 or 7 times. And you watch it back on the replay. On track, before they've gone across the line, Ricciardo was right up the back bottom of Hamilton, and he must have got out of the throttle at least 4 times. And then actually in the pit lane as well, because you know how Mercedes are obviously the first garage. Was
he actually going slow in the pit lane as well?
He was going slow in the pit lane, and he was turning very slowly into his pit box, because there's obviously a huge strip which is empty because they're the first team, and he turned in so slowly, and he spent a lot of the time in the middle of the pit lane, so in the fast lane. So Ricciardo was getting out the throttle once, twice, 3 times in the fast lane, and this is the biggest problem. That if you're trying to sit there and say Hamilton, well, the thing that everyone keeps bringing up is the fact that Ricciardo still got out ahead of Hamilton.
Doesn't matter.
But Mercedes had 2 6-second pit stops. Let's say if they had 2 2-second pit stops, Hamilton would have been out ahead of Ricciardo. No doubt about it. So, and also like Arif said, there is no doubt about it because he still broke a rule. It doesn't matter if, I don't know, I was going to use a football example, but I'm not going to use a football example. I'm just going to stick to rules. If you break a rule, you deserve a punishment for it. It doesn't matter even if it's an intention to break a rule. You still have done that intention.
I really can't see any logic behind him not getting a penalty.
And 5 seconds is perfect because it's quite a petty little thing.
Perfect timing, because that's how much he probably backed Ricciardo off from closing into the pit lane. So I think that's pretty much end of argument. Don't even talk about it anymore. So I think getting back to the whole thing. So we've already kind of mentioned it. That's pretty much the entire story of the race. Was Mercedes' race pace just didn't seem to be quite there. Hamilton obviously got fudged a little bit by getting stuck one behind Bottas. Then the penalty came in for his pit stop. So it may have been a different race if you take into account if he had not got held up by Bottas by about maybe 6-ish seconds throughout that entire stint, then the 5 seconds would have been a different race. But that's 2 big time chunks that he lost that, you know, you just can't say that, okay, so those two, they completely cancelled out. He would have been right there because Ferrari then would have reacted maybe differently. The safety car obviously played into a big factor. If the safety car had not come out, Vettel would have been in a much better position coming off out of the safety car. So, all in all, I think Ferrari just done a fantastic job today, and Mercedes maybe are still scratching their heads a little bit about that race car pace. And as we said, you know, on edge, qualifying cars, Callum said, you know, they're definitely there for qualifying. There's no doubt about it, but just doesn't seem...
They didn't seem to have the race pace on super soft either, did they? They seemed to struggle a little bit on the super soft compared to the soft.
It was weird. It seemed like most teams only halfway through the race realised, oh, the soft tyre is the race tyre, which is odd because in FP2, the soft tyres were going quite well, but obviously we don't have the data in front of them, so they probably thought the super softs were going to go better. Conditions were different for the race compared to FP2 and Altered Quali. They were saying it's a lot colder during that race. It was a lot windier, Hulkenberg was saying at the beginning of the race, so that could have definitely played into a factor of it all changing a little bit and throwing another nice spanner in the work.
I personally think I think this race was a highlight of I genuinely think if Mercedes, like, I think they stick to their morals too much. I think if Hamilton had been let go so much earlier this race, I think he would have been fine because I think he had the pace to win the race and beat Vettel. To be quite honest with you, I know he was on fresher tyres at the end and whatnot, but he genuinely looked like he was ready to go. Like, he had to sit behind Bottas that entire first stint. I know Vettel was in between them, but what I'm saying is, I think Bottas was just not doing Hamilton any favours this race whatsoever.
So you're saying that maybe Hamilton should have said, guys, let me in, or should have had the ability to go, guys, can I come in now? Because I'm being held up.
Yeah, because they're so committed to this whole the first driver pits thing that.
And same strategies.
Yeah.
It cost them as a team. It probably cost them the race today. So.
I mean, when he was stuck behind Bottas, there was this moment where they were like, let Lewis through. But then they changed their minds and said, stay where you are. Because then Bottas did pick up the pace. So it was almost like they had to do it so much earlier than they actually did. Like, when they said, let Hamilton through, that was probably like, six laps too late. Because then Bottas just put the foot down a little bit, enough where they were like, okay, you're picking up the pace. Just stay where you are. And then they kind of wrecked both their strategies.
It was like Vettel at Shanghai with Raikkonen. Like, they should have just let him go away earlier.
Yeah, you were saying the exact same thing.
Yeah, you mentioned that, yeah.
And like, I think also, not just a side note, Hamilton almost smacked Bottas right with the rear when Bottas let him through eventually. It was so close. Like, it was a bit of a dodgy one.
It was an odd place to let someone through, I'll give him that.
Very odd.
I think
it took me by surprise, because I was looking down at my phone and Ben Edwards went, oh, and I was like, what? I don't know, so Hamilton got inside.
I think the story, to sort of summarise, because obviously I think we're a little bit tight for time. So, Mercedes, Bottas, really disappointing. Didn't see anything really major from him in this race. Hamilton, just sort of unlucky. Got sort of flushed down the chain for being the second driver on track position behind his teammate, therefore getting the short straw. Vettel played it perfectly with the team, and Raikkonen ghost. So
kind of ghost.
I think it's the two fans that need to pick up their shit.
I was saying this to Tom yesterday. He's just the way he's going. Obviously, we said this last year. We said it before. Raikkonen starts
in the
season
second half of the season. He picks it up, but so far he stinks. Like, bro,
yeah, he's really. He was behind Massa and actually having to fight him and Ricciardo for quite a bit of that race. So it just the pace difference. Obviously, I think he definitely. I do know he had an issue of some sort midway through that race. Don't know if it got fixed or not, but he was talking about doing a setting. His engineer was saying that. Weirdly,
Karun Chandok picked up on this. I've been watching Channel 4, by the way. Much better than Sky. I'll just tell you that for now. He noticed that Raikkonen was once again, like, for the second race running, or I think for the third race running, he picked up his pace right at the end of the race. He put in just a bank. I don't think it was the fastest lap of the race overall because of Hamilton's little... Yeah. But he picked up the pace right at the end, and it's quite an odd circumstance because how can he be slow for 56 laps and then all of a sudden be one of the quickest drivers on the track on lap 57? It's very odd that he just suddenly gains pace.
I was watching Spanish coverage all weekend, and I watched the race on Channel 4 with no sound. I was watching Spanish coverage, and they kept on saying, because if you notice, Raikkonen keeps complaining about the same thing every race weekend. I've got understeer. And we're 3 races into the season now, and it's one of them ones where you think, well, if you can't sort the issue out, then what's going on then? Because you can't have the whole preseason and 3 races, and you still got the same issue as the first race.
Obviously, it would be worse at the beginning with heavier fuel. You just have more kind of understeer because you have to adjust braking and all that. So,
but surely they're going to get on top of it soon. Like they can't go into every race weekend with the same problem, because you ride on board with Raikkonen and you can see he's got understeer, but surely they've got obviously Ferrari had a new front wing this race weekend, and clearly that paid off because they won the race. But you look at both of the number 2 drivers and you see Bottas struggling with tyres all race. First stint wasn't really his fault, but the rest of the race struggling. Raikkonen struggling with the same problem, and it's just like, how come Vettel and Hamilton aren't having these problems?
I think the cars are just a little bit lean towards those two drivers.
It's not just Mercedes and Ferrari though. Haas, Grosjean and Magnussen. I know Magnussen had problems, but even still, one qualified last, the other one qualified 9th. Hulkenberg, Palmer. I mentioned it the other day. Today wasn't that. Obviously, you can't really tell, but Alonso's been much better than Van Dorn so far.
Oh, Van Dorn. We'll probably get onto him in a minute because my heart breaks for him at the minute.
Massa's miles ahead of Stroll. At the moment,
should
every
we go
team's
team by
got
team now?
That's what I'm saying. I think Ferrari and Mercedes are pretty much done. Raikkonen's had an absolute stinker. Now, in terms of Red Bull, which is their next team, Ricciardo did alright. I think he turned up out of nowhere in Q3 yesterday. I was like, oh, hi guys, I've finally turned up now. I know Verstappen's had a good all weekend, but yeah, I'm here now. I qualified P4. Hi.
Well, that's the thing with Red Bull, because in FP3, Verstappen pulled out the fastest lap, and they did look quite good. And through Q1 and Q2, they did look quite good. But like Red Bull have been saying pretty much all season, that Mercedes have this magic button, this magic dial, which they just puts it up to 11, and they really do start to stretch the legs of the Mercedes. And to be fair play to Ricciardo for getting within the Ferraris, because in the same way that, when like last season, whenever a Ferrari or a Red Bull got in between the two Mercedes, it always just stirs it up a little bit. So the fact that Red Bull are trying to just poke at the heels of Ferrari, then fair play to them. But I think that's the most they could have done this weekend, to be honest. And Verstappen, a very odd brake failure. I think we watched him. We didn't actually, but on the replay, it was just very odd. Like the car just didn't slow at all. I think it was a rear brake. It was not as spectacular as Massa's spin earlier on in the weekend when he had a brake failure. Yeah. But the cars seeming to be pushed to their limits this weekend. I'll give it that.
Yeah, Ricciardo pretty much maximum Red Bull could have hoped for, 5th. That's pretty much where they are. Same thing with Massa, really. That's where Williams are, really. He had a very quiet race. A little bit of battling with Raikkonen. It was kind of nice to see him at one point ahead of Raikkonen, kind of actually getting stuck in a little bit, because he has mentioned so far he's been quite bored about the races because Williams is sort of in no man's land with Red Bull, like too far ahead of the rest to kind of really fight. But that's pretty much the end of Williams' story. Stroll got hit by Sainz.
Yeah.
Sainz at the time said
what do you reckon of that incident?
It's Sainz just was too audacious with the dive bomb.
Yeah,
there's
no two. I don't see there's two ways. He was
mistake.
too far back and he just went for it, and Stroll was already turning well in. So I think it's Sainz's fault.
It's once again though. Yeah, I'll say it's hands down Sainz's fault, because he did lunge very late. It
was a perfectly fine move to attempt, but the fact he just come out of pit on cold tyres. No,
wrong time. It's just once again Stroll being hit on the rear.
I mean, I think people are very, very, including us. I think we're very quick to criticise and make fun of Stroll. In the first race, he didn't have any issues, but it's his first race in Formula One. Second and third race, he's got unlucky both times being hit. So I think you can't really even judge him at any point. Still, we still yet to see what he's really capable of in a race. So that's pretty much
his fault, but.
China.
Today was Sainz's fault. Because I don't remember how in China he just literally turned into the cars inside him.
It was Paris,
side by side. Yeah, it just went bang straight into him. But today was like, I saw it, and Sainz, he was not making that corner. Let's just make that straight. He was not making that corner.
But
he would have had to go kind of straight on and then turn back on himself with a very tight turn to make that corner.
Yeah, but thinking if we've got Toro Rosso next, I just want to say I actually just want to do a bit of a shout out to Sainz, because his start. Holy fucking shit.
Amazing.
How the hell was it P11 he got up to?
P11, up to P11 within a lap and a bit. It was great.
One of the best starts I think we've seen this season, but then again, we have had Perez, who we're probably going to speak about in a minute, but...
we can write off for Sainz, though, overall. I mean, the qualifying yesterday, really unfortunate.
Very unlucky,
so unlucky.
Yeah.
A complete write-off for Sainz. I want to mention Kvyat, a couple of good moves. That was a great move on I want to say, was it Ocon or was it Alonso? No,
I think it's Palmer. It was an absolute dive bomb on Palmer. That
into
was
turn
a really
one.
Nice move. Yeah, that was a really nice dive bomb move into Arden Palmer. And then that was we'll get to that. That was a very nice scrap between those three drivers. But yeah, Perez in 7th place and Ocon 10th. Again, Force India dragging their car up, their overweight car apparently. That's not really been performing too well. It's been very iffy in qualifying, and both their drivers doing solid jobs again to pull that pig team into the points. Great stuff.
They're doing well. They are doing very well.
Stuff.
Whenever I look at them in qualifying, you can see the weight in qualifying. There's only one reason why they're so bad in qualifying, and that's their weight, really. But they really do lug it about in the race, don't they? They really do lug it to the front. So fair play to both drivers. Fair play to Ocon because he's had a really solid start to the season. But Perez as well. I think he put a nice move on Hulkenberg earlier on in the race. So kind of just a little nudge to Hulkenberg. It's like, yeah, we're still here. I know you've had a good qualifying and everything, but we're still here and we're still fighting.
Yeah, and then Grosjean 8th place. Good to see that after obviously the annoying race he had in China to come back into that. So
did you two watch any of the any of the free practice sessions?
Yeah, I watched the one where he actually crashed.
Whew. Grosjean was having a stinker of a weekend. He was really struggling, moaning. He was
getting really hot under the helmet.
Really hot under the collar. And then I don't know how he managed to get it into Q3 after struggling so much in FP3.
I think
you
can attribute it to because he crashed in FP3, didn't he? I think that's one of the things where you can literally, I won't say blame it on completely or attribute it to, but the fact that FP3 is in the daytime and qualifying was in the nighttime, so the condition and the temperature change obviously completely affects the balance of the car and how it performs. So maybe that might have something to do with it. But Grosjean, great. Like he's had a good start to the season. Like in Australia, 6th place in qualifying, he pulled one out of the bag there. So I think Haas a bit of a funny team. Magnussen to me so far has been disappointing. I know he's had a few issues, but
I would say complete opposite. I think he's been great. I think he's just been hampered. He did a fantastic race in China. He's retirement both times.
Q1.
Like obviously in Australia it was his fault almost, but completely. But in Bahrain here, you can't do much when your car just pulls to the side of the road. So and he was the one who scored the first points for the team. So I think really just unlucky this race.
Grosjean was running in 6th though in Australia.
In Australia, but then you flip that to China. Grosjean was really nowhere in those conditions, whereas Magnussen was actually shining in those conditions for Haas. So I think both of them. I think
it's like a pendulum.
I think the pundit said, like the Haas did well to sign these two drivers, Grosjean keeping him and getting Magnussen in, because now they do have two drivers. When nothing goes wrong, they can both score some decent points for them later on in the season.
I'll say this: I can't make my mind up as to where the car feeds in the pack. They're very like wishy-washy.
Flip-flops, yeah.
Yeah, I can't. Sometimes they just look like a really good 4th place team, but then other times you're just like, nah. So, Haas did well. The other team I want to talk about, mainly, especially for the qualifying performance, is Renault.
Yeah. Hulkenberg finally points for Renault.
Major strides.
Hands up. Palmer, Q3, solid. Well done to him.
Yeah.
But Hulkenberg was still ahead of him. The race.
But both Renaults in Q3, that fact alone is just amazing to consider.
I think your tweet yesterday, Aaron, when you said it was like that was unimaginable.
Well, I said it last race at China when Hulkenberg got P7. Like, people don't seem to be that batting an eyelid about it, but 2 Renaults in Q3 as actual Renault team, they're not Lotus, Renault themselves. That's the first one since 2010 or 2009 or 08. Like, major good form from Renault. So
didn't Palmer have to make one extra stop today? I think that was the reason why he was so far back. Because I don't want to slam Palmer too much, because I don't want to be a part of this bandwagon.
Because he did kind of fall away out of nowhere from where he was.
Didn't you get a bit of front wing damage at one point?
Not that I saw on a TV feed, at least.
I don't know. I very briefly saw a replay before I had to head out very quickly, so I don't know whether he lopped a little bit off his front wing or not.
He did seem like he kind of just magically dropped away from his fight with Kvyat and Alonso, so maybe so. Speaking of that fight, Kvyat came 12th. We'll get to Pascal Wehrlein in a second, 11th, but Kvyat in 12th, and Alonso was fighting with him, and Palmer was, before obviously Alonso had his issue and parked the car up in the garage, but So a nice little scrap. It was unfortunate. It was only for freaking 11th. So it was kind of, very annoying again to see Alonso fighting so hard for not even points. But it was a nice little scrap between those three, kind of swapping positions. Like one moment we saw the battle I think it was on the Sky commentary. Crofty was like, it was Alonso, Kvyat, Palmer, and then we cut on to a little, Mercedes Ferrari battle. We'll come back to them, and it's Palmer, Kvyat, Alonso. So it's kind of swapped completely. It was great to see that. There was so much jiggling up. Unfortunate though, in the end of it. We saw the McLaren fan TV come out, full broadcast from the cockpit of Alonso, 300 metres, and they're catching us. I've never driven a car with so little power, and then at the end, they can't even make the finish properly because they have to, Alonso's saying he's got an issue with the engine, and obviously, even how angry he is, I think he was still thinking about, we don't have many engines to spare, so I think we should retire this. And Stoff, obviously, Callum mentioned, didn't even get going. I feel very bad for him because Zach Brown said the exact same thing. Just very unfortunate that his car's getting most of the issues, and they're pretty terminal ones most of the time.
But then again, well, at least I was going to say
as a whole,
Alonso
this
had
team
problems,
is
but
just.
I am genuinely pissed off. I'm furious at McLaren. I'm not even a McLaren fan in the slightest. No, man, it just. I told you yesterday. Right now, if McLaren just had a good car, I'm starting to see the potential of a top 5 in terms of the best teams in the grid, and that could be Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari, Renault, Red Bull in an ideal situation. Those battling out in the top 10, that'd be tasty. Good. Renault on that path, but McLaren, what are you doing? And I told you about Alonso. I'm watching his post-race interview. Yeah, I think he got a bit hot in the race with team radio that he said. I didn't hear it because I wasn't listening to the commentary, but he said something about this is the worst engine I've ever had or something like that.
That's it.
But I've been reading his post-race quotes. He's perfectly calm. I told you yesterday, he seems to have stopped giving an F about
doesn't care
the car.
He's got Indy 500
and he's counting down, exactly, he's counting down the days to Indy 500, and he's just like, yeah, we'll just have to keep trying. We've got the upgrades coming soon, but it's going to be a very painful month coming up.
Just overall thinking about McLaren, Mark Webber, they were doing a little grid walk, a little garage walk in qualifying. And Mark Webber literally just said straight up, when I look at McLaren, they look like a bottom.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Team.
Yeah, look, this looks like a small team, doesn't it? It's a small team, but it's McLaren.
That's
it looks like a small team.
Punch that is. Yeah, I'm not being funny.
Get your action. It's not like a lot of it is Honda's fault, but there's a few niggling issues from last race that were McLaren's fault. But this race was totally just the power unit's fault. They're fine through the corners. They're actually really I think Brundle was commenting that talking to some other people in the paddock through the corners. They look pretty much as good as Red Bull did through some of those corners that are quite tricky. But then just the power output, and usually a car feels better with lower power. But it's just too low power. To be
fair, of all tracks though, where would you think there'd be the most problems?
Yeah.
In the middle of a desert when it's really hot. Imagine if it was in the fucking daytime.
Same old story. God, I think it's going to get quite tiring to keep on talking about it, so I think that's pretty much all to say. And then Verline, 11th place, out. Obviously Ericsson retired eventually, but before that, Ericsson was down in 15th, 16th, and Verline was there 11th for most of the race.
I'd go back, I'd even say yesterday in qualifying, 13th place.
Yeah.
Really pull one out of the bag. And I told you yesterday, if that Sauber just had a 2017 spec power unit in it.
Oh, yeah.
To be fair, maybe we need to
for a few points.
We need to remove our statements about Giovinazzi replacing Verline. We might need Giovinazzi possibly replacing Ericsson. But then again, Ericsson's had a very solid start to the season. So it's almost like Sauber's got the same problem they had a couple of years ago, where they've got three good drivers.
I'm no Arrow, but here's the thing. Visually, it's not like when we saw Manor last year and years gone by, and with Caterham and HRT, their car doesn't look visually like, oh, that car definitely looks like the slowest car on the grid. They've got their car looks decent. They've got a few bits on there, and the fact that they've gone out and, for example, they've got a T-wing, which is something that other teams don't have. And you see now that I think this weekend they've put out these new the bat wings on the chassis. So when you watch the onboard, they've got the bat wings like what Ferrari have.
Yeah.
They're investing. They've got money there to spend on it, and they're developing the car all right. I think it's just a fact, similar to Toro Rosso last year. I think they're just struggling to be in the power unit department.
Yeah. Just one thought. I just thought about Lance Stroll for this weekend. I know we have given him the benefit of the doubt the past couple of races, but apparently, do you know how Stroll was one of the first people into the pits? he keeps flat spotting his tyres in the first stint. He did it in Australia, and he also did it here today as well. And, okay, fair play. If he did finish the race, then obviously we would see the results. But if he does want to be up there with Massa, he needs to stop these silly little mistakes where he'll completely ruin a set of tyres to the point where he can't handle the vibrations and he's going to have to go into the pits and completely mess up his strategy. So that's some food for thought for maybe going into the next couple of races. Also, did you two hear about Stroll struggling in the car, I think, on Friday because his feet were quite warm?
His feet caught on fire, like they were like, piping hot. Like there was some issue in the car they had to solve. Like he was like, "I'm in pain."
Very odd.
Like, that was
he
that
sounded
to do real
a practice
nasty,
start.
like driving around like with your feet on, like basically on like iron boards.
But what could make your feet go that hot?
It was because you're near some like electrical bits at the very bulkhead of the car. Maybe I don't know.
Right.
Because
you'd think it'd be his arse, wouldn't it? You'd think
where the think so as well.
With all this stuff behind him, you'd think that'd be the arse.
I thought it was interesting though. There was an interview with Claire Williams saying that she's very impressed with Stroll so far. Like she was like, if you look at the actual data, don't look at the results. Just look at the data that we have. He's actually very decent for what we're getting, which is a rookie in F1, and that she's not nervous watching him out on track. So I think maybe it's just a case of like the F1, like the 2017 season. You know, we had to get past the crap that was Melbourne, which I think personally that track just needs to liquidate now because it is horrible compared to the two races we've had so far. Bahrain needs to take over the round one. It does, but just like the 2017 season. Just like the 2017 season, we have to give it time, and we have done, and now it's great. I think Stroll, just give him some time. Same with Van Dorn, who's had issues every single race. Give him time, and we'll see. As for McLaren, I don't think anyone can give them time. They need to just pull some miracle out the bag, and it's not going to come, honestly. So, yeah, as I said, it'll get tiring speaking about them. But
overall,
another cracking race, awesome little race, very tense at parts. You know, especially. It was great, that one shot, what was it, within 10 laps of the race, like the top 5, so close on the same straight. It was just great. It's great to see that, and it's great to see that Mercedes genuinely have a challenge from Ferrari, and Ferrari are genuinely there. Seb's there, you know, he's liking the car, he seems very comfortable in the car, and that's great for us to view him and Lewis go at it. Maybe not as much as we want on track, but even strategically he's great, just to go at it and kind of, as I said, I think I mentioned it in Australia, kind of maybe ping-ponging results back and forth.
Yeah, I'd definitely give it a solid 7 again, like in China. I think
same as China.
Another race which kind of died down in the middle. It did have the prospects to have a good ending. Maybe without Hamilton's penalty, we could have had a real good ending, but that's how it comes. So yeah, a solid 7 from me.
I'll give it 7.5. I go a little bit higher than China. I think it had a little bit more action than China.
Yeah, I think it did. I think a little bit more. Yeah.
Maybe even an 8. I think if Hamilton didn't have the 5-second penalty, I would have given it an 8 just because it would have made it a little bit more interesting.
A little bit closer.
No, yeah. I enjoyed it, even though I wasn't properly watching it. It looked really good. It was really good seeing, like you said, the 5 cars at the front all very close on the same straight. And don't expect me to ever say this again, but at the moment, a shout out to Massa. Good job.
Whoa!
Today,
what year is this?
Today was a perfect example of why they brought him back, because he just had a solid race, like good enough, best of the rest. So, yeah, fair play.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much wrapping it up there. So, guys, if you have enjoyed the podcast, hit that like button. Let us know what you thought about anything we discussed in the comments below. If you're around here, then do subscribe to this channel for the podcast. Check out these 2 links in the description, and also all our Twitters above our names. As usual, you would have seen it on screen. This is also available on SoundCloud, so you can watch it or listen to it on the go. But yeah, that's been us, the Pitlane Podcast, episode 44 for Vettel's 44th win ahead of the 44 number driver. We'll see you guys next time for the mid-race sort of, more F1 kind of news stuff. Obviously, we've had news in the previous week that we'll mention, and there will undoubtedly be news following this race and stuff like that. So we'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.